Hello, welcome to my studio. My name's Carrie Waltz. If you haven't been here before, I share tips, tools, and techniques for the artist in you. And today's video was actually filmed several months ago, and I couldn't find it and realized, oh, it was filmed on my camera, not my phone. So I recently found it, went through, edited it, and I realized as I was sharing my journal, and this was the first journal I completed, I had 25 tips for you. And all these tips aren't related to watercolor. Some of it might be composition, it might be perspective, showing movement, ways to get atmospheric perspective, a variety of things that I think you'll enjoy. So follow along with me as I flip through my first journal and how I started capturing a live history. It's not really live, or a documented history of things that I've done. And I think you'll be interested in trying this yourself. I'm so happy today to share chapter 1 of my first journal that I ever completed. So I hope you'll enjoy this as I walk through the journal. This is chapter 1, and chapter 2 will be shortly. Please let me know if you have any questions, and if you have subscribed, thank you so much for subscribing. I have over 1,000, and I met that goal a year before I thought I would. So thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope what I share here is beneficial to you. So have a great day. This was one of the first journals that I had that was made with watercolor paper, Moleskine.com, www.moleskine, however you say that. Love it though. It's nice size, 5.5 inches by 8, and it has a pocket in the back that you can store things in. I'd visited Sunnyside, Florida, sat on the beach, had the beautiful, beautiful water, the green, and soft edge. Make sure you have a little extra water there so it'll blur. Leave space for your bird. I think I drew it in place and then painted around it. You can see the white of the background here coincides with the white of the bird, and then this part is darker than what the background is. So think about things like that. I also went on a mission trip in 2016. These were some of the memories that I had while I was there. I wake up early in the morning and the birds just sing to me, a beautiful reminder of the one who created them. These are some of our vegetables and fruits that we bought while we were there. We were going to do a vacation Bible school for one of the local churches, Harnessing the Wind. This was one of the little boys that I met while I was there. I drew his picture one afternoon and showed it to him the next day, and he recognized himself, which was kind of cool because I didn't speak the language that he did. So sometimes I include quotes. We travel not to escape life, but for life not to escape us. Curacao was a beautiful place. This was an arrangement in the home we were staying in. And one of the things that really surprised me was that there were fences around everyone's home, and they were all different, but they were all guarded by these mean guard dogs, and you just didn't want to get too close because you're afraid the dogs would bite you through the fence. But the decoration of their fences and all the different bright colors are a lot of fun. And when you journal, you don't have to have just one thing on a page. It can be a group of things with a similar topic. And I kind of did that here. This was some vacation Bible school activities that we did, all grouped on one page. And I love the openings in this fence. You could see through it to the other side. So I just drew that. It was a Church of Christ that we were helping, and these are some songs in their language. And you can create an image in the back and then do the writing on top and use a white gel pen if the writing doesn't show up. But that's just one way to capture a memory. And then the locations that we went to. Most of these were painted from photographs, not plein air, because when you're on a trip with other people in a schedule, you barely have time to snap a picture. We did have time to take one afternoon and go to the coast, one of the beaches there, and walk around the area. And my morning devotionals were from Jesus is Calling by Sarah Young. The light of his presence is shining upon you. Brighten up the world by reflecting who I am. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the life of light. This was a actual pink elephant. It was a landmark. I don't know what it was made out of. Cement, probably. And one of the girls that was on the travel with us. This particular painting took me longer to do than the 10 previous ones all together. This I actually completed once I returned home from the trip. But I sketched it all out in pencil first, painted the big shapes. The tiny detail of the white was a gel pen, including the part of the boat. And I just really enjoyed how that turned out. Another one of the girls that I went with, and then the bridge that was in St. Anna's Bay in Willemstad Harbor. Helps if I can read. We were caught in a thunderstorm on the way home, and our flight was delayed, and so I glued in my ticket stubs just for that reminder. And shortly after I returned, I took a trip to visit my brother and his wife and my mom in Texas, and he takes old guitars, transforms them into beautiful stained glass, and he lives in Waco, Texas. That's Mark McCall. And these are hanging in his dental office. And a fish that was on my mom's wall that my stepdad caught in Brazil. And this is just an example of how you can take texture of a brick wall and just hint at it, not do anything exact, but you know it's a brick wall. You can tell this is an abstract painting and that these are flowers. But this painting didn't take very long at all to do, just hinted at a lot of it. Back to Florida with my daughter Kelsey, and Dida, a friend of mine's dad, brought in some chocolate cupcakes that were to die for. And Kelsey and I love to play miniature golf, so we played at one of the local places. So things like this that are just memories of where you go, whether it's up close and personal or showing a little perspective. You know there's trees back there, but there's not one specific tree that's in great detail. And then I went to Virginia to visit a friend, and West Point, and flowers in her house. I guess it's easier to go this way. Again, the first marsh that we saw going into town, and so much of that town is built around the Chesapeake Pulp Paper Company. It was established in 1914, and I just had to draw a sketch of that and remember the people who work there. This was a sunset where we were staying right on the mouth of the James River, and then we went to Williamsburg for the first time, and I wanted to capture a feel of the people who portray the life history in the area. And again, just a little bit of hint or a fence, foliage in the background. You can tell that's a flag, a U.S. flag, and just by bending his leg and creating just a little bit of shadow, seats the person and gives a little movement in the process. And again, the texture, just suggested texture of the walkway in both of these. Wings are to a bird and sails to a ship as to prayer to a soul. Corrie ten Boom. Jamestown settlement. I loved sketching this out. I did it, of course, from a photo because we just didn't have time to sit and sketch while I was there. This boat and the ones from Curacao were the first boats I've ever really painted. And just look at just the shapes and just indicate a few major lines, and you capture the feel of the ship. And don't forget the diagonal perspective. If you want something to seem like it's further off in the distance, don't have it really dark. Lighten it up or cool it off. I like the perspective. The sidewalk gets smaller as you go farther away. And again, that the trees are just suggested. I do the greenery first and then throw in a few trunks. Loved going through the tunnel bridge, and just thought it was interesting. Do not change lanes in the tunnel. And we taught some friends how to play Mahjong. This was on a different trip back from Virginia to Chattanooga for my 33rd anniversary with my husband. And this was one of the dogs that was in the bed and breakfast where we stayed. Cloudland Canyon State Park, Georgia was a wonderful hike. And I want to go back there someday. There's 600 stairs all the way down. And unfortunately, it had been a really dry season, and there were not many at all of the waterfalls that had water in them. It was very dry. So we will go back. This fountain is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was at night, so I did the background dark. And then I came back with a gel pen and wrote in the words. Chickamauga at Chattanooga National Military Park. Sorry, I can't even talk. The cannon is just one of the ones that we saw as we explored the park. We walked all over it that day. And then when you can cast shadows, it just adds a little interest. Back home, Georgia National Fair. and just showing a little bit of the reflection in the little pond that's in front. I just think makes it a little more interesting. I went to the Dale Chihuly glass installation at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. It was wonderful. I painted there with a friend. And my next trip was to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and it was in the fall, and I picked up some of the autumn leaves and painted those. Oh, guess what? Oops, wasn't quite feeling myself today. I didn't realize I painted upside down. My husband went into town to get me some medicine, and I was on the back porch painting just to fill time. I didn't realize I picked up my journal and painted upside down till later. We walked the loop road of Cades Cove, and it's about 11 miles, but we logged 14 miles that day, and we stopped for lunch at the visitor center. After that trip, I headed to Temple, Texas to visit my mom. My stepdad, Henry, this was his favorite tree in town, and it was near a hill called Suicide Hill. Again, trees just suggested, and the branches and trunks put in later. This one, I did the light color first and then added the darks as I wanted a little bit more shading. And be sure to put a little shading a little bit under the trees, even over here was just lightly suggested, so that, because they cast shadows, whether it's much of a sunny day or not. And back home in Georgia, High Falls State Park, hiked with my husband in the fall. Then back to Texas, San Antonio for a wedding, and the wedding was, some of the activities were right across from the Alamo, and it was really, really cold. I think like 17, 18 degrees when I painted this, and I was wearing gloves. And this painting took about 30 minutes. But this is where, when I first sat down, I wasn't sure what to start with, and I decided to lay in the shape of the negative space of the sky, and that just gave me the main shape of the building. I put in some shadows to create the edges and the arches, and just again a hint of the texture. I didn't even finish this side of the building or draw the flagpole, but leaving a space and a little point where the star would be, it just suggested that that's a Texas flag, and it's enough to capture the memory. My brother had a joke going with the local the local waitress, and it was just kind of funny. And I just drew that memory. A friend of mine brought home a Buddha monk figurine, and she told me about her walk up to the monastery and then having to carry that Buddha monk figurine home and all the steps. There was 400 steps up the base of it. Then I went to Hilton Head Island and visited a friend. This is looking out her backyard onto a golf course, and capture some of the birds, peaches. I'm back in Texas again, looking at bluebonnets. We went to a poppy field in Fredericksburg, Texas. They have a wildflower seed farm, and it was so fun because there was poppies on one side, bluebonnets on the other, and my mom and her friend Mady and my sister-in-law Suze and I had a girls' retreat in Fredericksburg, Texas. It's great fun. Now I'm back in Georgia, Callaway Gardens, with some friends for a birthday celebration. This was one of the pictures I painted at Callaway Gardens, and just thinking, if you want distant hills, these are just suggested, very blurred. The closer you get, the more vibrant your colors are, and the more detail that you see. And then I painted one of the butterflies that I'd seen in the garden. Back at High Falls State Park with my husband, and we saw some of the turtles sitting on the rocks, and the other one was in the fall. This is in the springtime because it's in May. I try to always date the time that I saw it, not necessarily the date that I painted it. And then I went to the zoo, Atlanta, to participate in the plein air event there, and that was the first time I had done that. So I was at the zoo for a week. Then I went to Jekyll. Driftwood Beach Island is just phenomenal. And the last day at the zoo, I painted an elephant. So, there's a lot of travel that first year. But all of this was done with one of those water brushes that you have the water in the handle.